I'm joined now by Lieutenant Colonel James Dickey. He's retired from the U.S. Army, a former intel officer and a Middle East specialist. Laura Ballman is an international business consultant and former CIA operations officer. She ran a counterintelligence division for the U.S. Department of Energy. And Jonathan Sanders is the former Moscow correspondent for CBS News and a professor of journalism at Stony Brook University. His latest book is The Russians Emerge. Lieutenant Colonel Dickey, I want to start with you. This is so fascinating to me. 75 times more people are Googling right now World War III. People are worried about this, seeing what's going on in the world, especially with Russia, China, and Iran. Should we really be worried about it? Could World War III actually be a thing?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say to that is, for all those people out there Googling World War III, I think the first thing you'll discover is there's not a lot of unity on what World War III would mean. If we're talking something along the lines of the day after general exchange of nuclear weapons, then I'd say that's not a real big risk at this point, although it is a risk that has never entirely gone away, even with the fall of the Soviet Union. On the other hand, some of us think of the global war on terror as World War III, having been a global conflict, albeit not a massive conventional war. Is there a possibility that we could see a general military operations simultaneously in different parts of the world? Yes, that's still a possibility, but probably not very likely at this very moment.
It certainly just feels like things are heating up. Laura, what are we supposed to think that when we hear that Russia, China, and Iran are planning these war drills in Latin America, really right in our backyard? Has anything like that ever been done before? I mean, what are they doing in Latin America?
Well, yes. I mean, they're always active in Latin America. Usually the activity is clandestine, but the Russians absolutely are active in Mexico. The Iranians are active in Central America. I mean, China, as we know, is exporting aid all over the entire developing world. And they're not doing that because they're nice. They're doing that because they want influence and they want resources.
Yeah, when you say aid, it's like aid. They're obviously up to no good, right, in a lot of these parts. But Laura, do you think that they all call each other up, the leaders, and say, okay, let's get down to Venezuela and let's start planning some things and scaring everybody in the U.S.? I mean, is there really a collaboration here?
Absolutely. There's a strategic alliance between Russia, Iran, and China. Absolutely. I mean, China is sort of the big dog in the group, if you will, by virtue of its economic power, its military power, its sheer number of people. But all three are incredibly strong intelligence adversaries and military adversaries from the United States. The United States is still better than any of them, but they share intelligence, they plan military activities together, they plan strategies at the United Nations together. But right now, we're in the middle of, talk about World War III. I think, James, you would agree with me. We're in a struggle between democracy and authoritarianism. They've chosen authoritarianism. We've chosen democracy, which is why, in my opinion, Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan was so incredibly important and in our interest.
Yeah, certainly. And seeing those images, both sides agreed. Seeing her get off the plane at night with the American flag lit up on the tail, it was sort of like a way that we could say, you know what? We are going to stand up to you guys. But, Jonathan, it certainly doesn't feel like they listen all the time or like they really care. Do any of these countries, does China, does Iran, does Russia, do they really fear America anymore?
Oh, yes, there is. I can tell you specifically from the Kremlin point of view that there is a great deal of fear of America. And I think if we're talking about looking for examples, people shouldn't Google World War III. They should Google the Spanish Civil War, where the West was on one side and the fascists actually did better and won, and the Russians, the Soviets then were supplying weapons. The Russians say that Kiev is winning some of the battles in Ukraine because America is behind it, as America's giving weapons. And to some degree, that is true. They like to annoy and get under the skin of Americans. Russia has been trying to undermine capitalist America since, well, you're in Chicago, Brian, you know, your poet who talked about City of Great Shoulders. What was one of the things that he did? He smuggled $10,000 from Lenin personally to try and start the Communist Party in the United States. And we've had, the Communist Party has had a lot of influence, but suddenly we've got to be doubting ourselves. And the great black secret box about doubting ourselves is that the Russian propaganda about the ineffectiveness of American elections has taken root and taken heart, and there is some kind of deal that has gone on that Mr. Trump has been pushing the same line as Mr. Putin. And this has been very dangerous for the United States.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting point that you make. Lieutenant Colonel Dickey, I want to bring you in on this. I mean, the disagreement and the public fighting between the right and the left, and the image that this country just hates each other. Is that what these countries want when we talk about Russia and Iran and China? I mean, is that their end game here, their goal?
Well, I'm not sure it's their end game. It's certainly a step on the way to their end game, because a disunified enemy is an easier enemy to confront. But on the other hand, I would also add that every one of those countries has always looked at the United States with some level of bemusement and view us as disunified just by the nature of our system. So that adds to the opportunities for miscalculation on everybody's part, because the general assumptions that get made on all sides are often invalid.
Lieutenant Colonel Dickey, I know how powerful and incredible our military is, and we can stand up to any of these countries. But when you add them all together, when you think about the coordination of China, Russia, and Iran, if they all teamed up together, would we have a real problem?
Well, we would if we were indeed fighting them all by ourselves. But that's not the American way of war. The American way of war is to find friends and ideally confront people before a war can break out. And so that's probably one of the reasons why we are so avidly pursuing partnerships with countries around the world. NATO is still a very real thing. We are engaging Japan and other countries throughout East Asia in security cooperation, certainly with long-term associations with Japan, South Korea, and so forth. So the idea here is never fight them alone, because if you fight them alone, then yes, you are going to be in trouble. But if you have friends, it gets a lot easier.
Let me ask you this, Laura, because when I woke up and I saw the video of Pelosi landing in Taiwan, my first feeling, which I think most Americans felt, was pride. Again, that we've stood up to China and that we did this. But then I thought, like, gosh, did we really screw over Taiwan here? Like, you know, Pelosi's going to take off and get out of there. Look, they're not going to shoot down her plane, but weeks from now, I mean, are they in trouble because of what we did?
Look, no, Taiwan lives in a bad neighborhood. I mean, this is not new living next door to China. I do not think that this is going to have negative consequences for Taiwan in a few weeks. As a matter of fact, China depends on the U.S. in some senses to sort of tap down Taiwan in certain situations. You know, this shows that what James was saying, this shows that we keep our commitments to our allies, you know, which was something that was completely blown to smithereens during the Trump administration. So this sends a strong, signal to Beijing that, Lord help us, if we were to fight, we wouldn't do it alone. But also, and this is important and something that hasn't really been entered into the conversation, which Speaker Pelosi being there also sends a really strong message to Beijing that the United States of America is not going to put up with their ongoing espionage in the United States, particularly in California, in the national labs and Silicon Valley. which obviously Speaker Pelosi has a lot to do with. So there's both the the overt message that we're sending, but there's also the statecraft that's less public that's happening through this. And also China's not going to respond beyond the military exercises, the strong rhetoric, because they want stability in the international system. That is their way. They're in the midst of the non-proliferation review, trying to get the Iran deal back on the table, which Russia and China see as in their interest. They have massive internal problems, hungry people, vaccine that doesn't work. And they saw how the international community has isolated Russia in the wake of its illegal war on Ukraine. So
yeah, it's a good point. It certainly seems like they need us. I mean, so much of our stuff that we buy comes from China. Certainly their economy would be in shambles without us. But Jonathan, we've seen some crazed threats come out of Russia over the last several months against the U.S., come out of China. You heard what they said leading up to Speaker Pelosi landing in Taiwan. Do you think, Jonathan, that we need to take these threats seriously, or should we just say, whatever, they're just saying that?
Oh, no, we need to take these threats very seriously. First of all, there is some doubt about the United States commitment. Just a year ago, look at the mess we left behind and how we got out of Afghanistan. The Russians, the Soviets did a much better job when they exited that country. We have to look, I wouldn't trade our problems for Putin's problems or Xi's problems. I don't know about Iran enough to say what their problems are. But we didn't get a real peace dividend after the end of the Cold War. Our Navy has shrunk. Mr. Putin has just come out with a new naval doctrine about expanding and taking over all kinds of ocean space. He wants to compete with America in the Arctic. They're building atomic icebreakers. We're building none. Our ship count is down. They've got a new weapon called the Zircon cruise missile, which goes 9 to 12 times the speed of sound. We can't shoot it down. The Cold War is getting colder, and there is a lot of competition for dollars, and we need to be spending some of our dollars building up defense, and by the way, building up our study of Russia and China, which have been they've just gone down the tubes. There are no people to replace me as a Russian specialist. When I was at the Russian Institute at Columbia, we had 5 people teaching just Russian history. Now they have 1.
Yeah, and they're studying us. I mean, that's for sure. Look at China.
Yeah.
They're studying our every move. So it's scary.
My students in Russia read the New York Times more astutely, more diligently, and more thoughtfully than my students here at Stony Brook.
Yeah, interesting and terrifying. Lieutenant Colonel Dickey, Laura Ballman, and Jonathan Sanders, thank you all for coming on tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.